She couldn't remember choosing to come here, but deep down, in a place beyond words, she knew she didn't belong. Not in the way others did. The feeling had been there since childhood, like wearing a coat that didn't quite fit. And when she closed her eyes during the session, searching for answers, what she found was not a past life on Earth, it was something else entirely. The room was quiet. Just the sound of her breathing, slow and steady. Her body sank deeper into the chair, muscles loosening one by one. The air felt thick, almost like water, and she was floating in it. Time began to stretch. Minutes felt like hours, hours felt like seconds, and then the presence started to fade. The walls, the ceiling, the sound of distant traffic outside, all of it dissolved like mist under morning sun. She was somewhere else now, not a place with streets or buildings, not a memory from this lifetime. This was different. This was before. Her awareness shifted. She could sense light, but not the kind that comes from a sun. This light was everywhere, and nowhere at once. It didn't cast shadows. It didn't have a source. It just was. And in this light, she felt herself as something other than a body. She was consciousness. She was energy. She was thought without form, and she wasn't alone. There were others here. She couldn't see them, not with eyes, but she knew they were present. Hundreds of them, thousands, maybe, all gathered for the same reason, all waiting for the same moment. And then a voice, not spoken but felt, asked a single question that sent a ripple through her entire being. Who will go? That's when the memory began to return. The memory of why she was here, on Earth, in this lifetime. The memory of a choice she made before she was ever born. She found herself in what could only be described as a gathering space. But it wasn't a room or a hall. It was more like a field of awareness where countless souls existed together. Each one a point of light, a spark of consciousness with its own unique frequency. And they were all focused on the same thing, Earth. She could see it, or rather, sense it, a blue and green sphere turning slowly in the darkness of space. But there was something wrong with it. The energy around it was heavy, dense, filled with fear and pain and confusion. Humanity was struggling, not just with wars or poverty or disease. Those were symptoms. The real struggle was deeper. Humanity had forgotten what it truly was, forgotten its connection to source, to love, to the infinite creative power that existed within every soul. They were lost in separation, in ego, in the belief that they were alone and powerless, and the weight of that forgetting was crushing them. The voice came again, resonating through the space. It wasn't a single voice. It was many voices speaking as one. The elders, she understood, beings of immense wisdom and compassion who guided the evolution of consciousness across countless worlds. They explained the situation with a clarity that bypassed words. Earth was approaching a critical point. A shift was coming, an opportunity for humanity to awaken, to remember, to rise into a higher level of consciousness. But the transition would be difficult. The old structures, the old ways of thinking, the old patterns of fear and control would resist, and many souls on Earth would need help. They would need others who could hold a different frequency, who could anchor light and love and truth into the dense energy of the physical world. They would need volunteers. She felt the weight of what was being asked. To incarnate on Earth during this time would not be easy. The volunteers would have to forget, at least temporarily, who they truly were. They would have to experience the same fears, the same doubts, the same pain that humanity was trapped in. They would feel the density of the physical world, the limitations of a human body, the heaviness of a mind conditioned by society, and they would feel alone, disconnected, different. Most volunteers would spend years, sometimes decades, feeling like they didn't belong, like there was something wrong with them, like they were waiting for something they couldn't name. It would be one of the hardest assignments a soul could accept. But the reward was beyond measure. To help an entire species remember their divine nature, to assist in the awakening of a planet, to be part of the greatest shift in consciousness that Earth had ever experienced. This was rare. This was sacred. This was why so many souls were willing to come despite the challenges. She looked around at the other points of light gathered there, each one radiating a different quality. Some were healers, carrying frequencies of love and compassion that could dissolve pain. Some were teachers, holding knowledge and wisdom that could illuminate minds. Some were warriors of light, strong enough to face the darkness without being consumed by it. Some were artists and creators, capable of inspiring others through beauty and expression. Each volunteer had a specific gift, a specific role to play. and together, they would form a wave. The first wave had already gone. Souls who incarnated in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, they had laid the groundwork, challenged the old systems, opened doors that had been closed for centuries. The second wave had followed in the 70s and 80s. They had spread new ideas, new ways of thinking, new approaches to healing and spirituality. And now, the third wave was being called her wave, the ones who would complete the shift. The elders made it clear that this was a choice. No soul was forced to volunteer. No soul was obligated to go. Free will was sacred, honored above all else. But for those who chose to go, support would be given. Guides would be assigned to watch over them, to send signs and synchronicities, to whisper guidance through intuition and dreams. And there would be moments, brief windows of remembering, when the veil would thin and they would glimpse the truth of who they really were. Those moments would sustain them, give them strength to continue. She felt herself drawn forward, not by obligation, not by duty, by love, pure, unconditional love for humanity, for the earth, for the experience of being part of something so profound, so transformative, so important. She wanted to help, she wanted to serve, she wanted to be part of the solution, part of the healing, part of the awakening. And so, without hesitation, she stepped forward, she agreed, she volunteered. The moment her choice was made, she felt a shift. Information began to flow into her awareness. She would be born in the late 80s. She would grow up feeling different, never quite fitting in with her peers. She would be sensitive, absorbing the emotions and energies around her like a sponge. She would struggle with anxiety and depression, not understanding why the world felt so heavy. She would search for meaning, for purpose, for answers to questions she couldn't articulate. And then, in her late 20s, the awakening would begin. Something would trigger the memory. A book, a conversation, a moment of crisis. The veil would lift, just enough, and she would start to remember why she came. She saw glimpses of the life ahead, a childhood marked by a sense of not belonging, school years spent feeling invisible, watching from the sidelines as others seemed to navigate life with ease. Teenage years filled with questions about existence, about death, about what happens after. Young adult years struggling to find a career that mattered, relationships that felt real, a place that felt like home. And then the turning point, the moment when everything she thought she knew would be shaken, and the truth would begin to emerge from beneath the layers of forgetting. She saw herself sitting in a small apartment, reading words that struck something deep inside. Words about consciousness, about energy, about the soul, words that felt like coming home. She saw herself crying, not from sadness, but from relief, from recognition, from the sudden understanding that she wasn't broken, wasn't wrong, wasn't crazy. She was a volunteer. She came here for a reason, and that reason was unfolding exactly as it was meant to. She saw the work she would do, not grand or famous, not celebrated or acknowledged by the masses, but important nonetheless. She would help people wake up, one conversation at a time, one act of kindness at a time, one moment of presence at a time. She would hold space for others to remember. She would shine light into dark corners. She would offer love where there was fear. And slowly, quietly, without fanfare or recognition, she would fulfill the mission she came here to complete. The elders spoke one final time. They reminded her that the journey would be hard. There would be moments when she wanted to give up, wanted to go home, wanted to escape the pain and heaviness of the physical world. But they also reminded her that she was never truly alone, that help was always available, that she was loved beyond measure, and that when the work was done, when the mission was complete, she would return to this place of light and be welcomed as a hero, because that's what volunteers were. Heroes of the highest order. Souls brave enough to dive into darkness in order to bring light. She felt herself being pulled away from the gathering. The light began to fade. The presence of the other souls grew distant. And then there was a sensation of falling, of descending, of moving through layers of density and forgetting. She was entering the physical realm. She was approaching Earth. She was becoming human. And as the final veil of forgetting descended, she held on to one last thought, one last truth that would remain buried in her subconscious, waiting for the right moment to resurface. I came to help humanity. I am here on purpose. This is my mission. And then she was born, crying, vulnerable, completely dependent on others for survival. All memory of the gathering, the choice, the mission, wiped clean. She was a blank slate, ready to be written on by the world around her. But deep inside, in a place beyond conscious thought, beyond language, beyond understanding, the truth remained, waiting, protecting her, guiding her, toward the moment when she would remember, when she would wake up, when she would finally understand why life had always felt so strange, so difficult, so different, because she wasn't from here, not originally. She was a volunteer, and her time to awaken was coming. The years that followed were exactly as the elders had predicted. She grew up in a world that felt foreign to her. As a child, she would stare at the sky for hours, feeling a pull toward something she couldn't name, a longing for home, but not the house where she lived, a different home, a place of light and warmth and unconditional love. Her parents thought she was just a daydreamer. Her teachers labeled her as distracted, but she wasn't distracted. She was remembering, in fragments, in fleeting moments that disappeared as quickly as they came. In elementary school, she noticed how different she felt from the other kids. They seemed content with simple things, playing games at recess, gossiping about classmates, competing for grades and popularity. But she couldn't bring herself to care about any of it. It all felt so shallow, so meaningless. She wanted to talk about deeper things, about why we're here, about what happens when we die, about whether we've lived before. But when she tried to bring up these topics, people looked at her like she was strange. So she learned to stay quiet, to hide her thoughts, to pretend she was just like everyone else. The teenage years were harder. The sense of not belonging intensified. She watched her peers form tight friend groups, fall in love, plan their futures with certainty and confidence. But she couldn't relate to any of it. She felt like she was watching life through a window, always on the outside looking in. She tried to fit in. She really did. She joined clubs, went to parties, dated people who seemed interested in her, but nothing felt authentic. Nothing felt right. There was always this nagging feeling that she was playing a role, wearing a mask, pretending to be someone she wasn't. Depression crept in during her late teens, not because of any specific trauma or event, just a general heaviness that seemed to settle over her like a thick fog. She couldn't explain it to anyone. How could she tell them that the world itself felt wrong, that being alive in a physical body felt like being trapped, that she missed the place she could unremember and longed for people she'd never met in this lifetime? They would think she was crazy. Maybe she was crazy. That's what she started to believe. That there was something fundamentally broken inside her. She tried to fix herself. Therapy, medication, self-help books, positive thinking. Some of it helped, temporarily, but nothing addressed the root of the problem, because the problem wasn't that she was broken. The problem was that she had forgotten why she came, forgotten what she was, forgotten the mission that lay dormant inside her, waiting for the right moment to activate. College came and went in a blur. She chose a major that seemed practical, got decent grades, graduated with a degree she had no passion for. She got a job in an office, sat in a cubicle, did work that meant nothing to her. She dated people who were nice enough, but didn't understand her. She went through the motions of life, checking off the boxes that society said she should check, but inside, she was dying, slowly suffocating under the weight of a life that wasn't really hers. The breaking point came when she was 27. She woke up one morning and couldn't get out of bed. Not because she was physically sick. She just couldn't see the point anymore. Couldn't find a reason to keep pretending. Couldn't muster the energy to put on the mask for one more day. She called in sick to work, then called in sick the next day, and the next, until eventually, she just stopped going, stopped answering emails, stopped responding to texts. She retreated into herself, into the only place that felt safe. For weeks, she barely left her apartment. She slept during the day and stayed awake at night, staring at the ceiling, asking questions into the void. Why am I here? What's the point of any of this? Why does everything feel so wrong? She didn't expect answers, but one night, lying in the darkness, she felt something shift, a presence, not physical, but unmistakable, like someone was in the room with her, watching, waiting. And then, clear as day, she heard words in her mind. You're ready now. She didn't know what it meant, but something inside her understood. She got up, turned on her computer, and started searching. She didn't even know what she was looking for. She just followed an instinct, a pull toward something. She typed words into the search bar: consciousness, soul, purpose, life, mission. And that's when she found it. A video about volunteers. about souls who came to Earth to help humanity during a time of great transition, about people who feel different, who don't fit in, who carry a deep sense of mission even when they don't know what it is. She watched the entire video without blinking. Tears streamed down her face as pieces of a puzzle she didn't know she was solving suddenly clicked into place. This was it. This was the answer she'd been searching for her entire life. She wasn't broken. She wasn't crazy. She was a volunteer. She came here on purpose. And everything she'd experienced, all the pain and confusion and isolation, it was all part of the plan, part of the process, part of what she needed to go through in order to do the work she came here to do. She spent the next several months consuming everything she could find on the subject: books, videos, podcasts, articles. She learned about the waves of volunteers, about how some souls incarnate specifically to help with planetary shifts, about how these souls often struggle in the early part of their lives because they operating at a different frequency than the world around them, about how the awakening process usually begins in the late 20s or early 30s, triggered by some kind of crisis or breaking point. It was all true. Every word resonated with a depth that went beyond intellectual understanding. This was soul-level recognition. But knowledge alone wasn't enough. She needed experience. She needed confirmation. She needed to remember, not just with her mind, but with every cell of her being. That's when she found the regression therapist, a woman who specialized in helping people access memories from before this lifetime, memories of the soul's journey, memories of past lives and between life states, memories of the choices made before incarnating. The session was scheduled for a Saturday afternoon. She arrived, nervous, unsure of what to expect. The therapist was kind, calm, with eyes that seemed to see right through her. They talked for a while first, about her life, her struggles, her questions, and then it was time. The therapist guided her into a deep state of relaxation, deeper than meditation, deeper than sleep. A state where the conscious mind stepped aside and the subconscious, the soul, could speak. And that's when it happened. The memory came flooding back. Not in pieces, not in fragments, but in a complete, overwhelming rush of recognition. The gathering, the elders, the choice, the mission, all of it. She was there again, in that space of light, surrounded by other volunteers, making the decision to come to Earth. And she remembered why. Not out of obligation, not out of duty, but out of love. Love for humanity, love for the planet. Love for the opportunity to be part of something so important, so transformative, so sacred. She saw her entire life from a different perspective. All the pain, all the struggle, all the moments when she felt broken and wrong, they weren't mistakes. They were preparation. They were training. They were necessary experiences that would allow her to help others who were going through the same thing. Because how could she guide someone through darkness if she'd never been there herself? How could she offer hope to the hopeless if she'd never felt hopeless? How could she help people remember if she hadn't first forgotten? And she saw the work ahead. Not the specifics, not a detailed plan, but the essence of it. She would help people wake up. Not by preaching or convincing or forcing, but by being a living example, by showing that it's possible to remember, that it's possible to find meaning and purpose even in the darkest moments, that it's possible to transform pain into power and confusion into clarity. She would do this through conversations, through writing, through simply being present with people in their struggles. She would hold space for others to remember their own truth, and in doing so, she would fulfill the mission she came here to complete. When the session ended and she opened her eyes, she was a different person. Or rather, she was finally the person she had always been, the volunteer, the helper, the light-bringer, the one who came to assist humanity during its greatest hour of need. And even though she knew the journey ahead would still have challenges, she no longer felt alone. She no longer felt lost. She had remembered, and that changed everything. In the weeks and months that followed, her life transformed. Not externally, at first. She still lived in the same apartment, still had the same circumstances. But internally, everything was different. She felt lighter, clearer, more aligned with who she truly was. She started saying no to things that didn't serve her mission. She quit the job that drained her soul. She ended the relationships that were built on pretense rather than truth. She let go of the need to fit in, to be normal, to make other people comfortable. She gave herself permission to be exactly who she was, without apology, without explanation, and something interesting happened. As soon as she stepped into her truth, the universe responded. Opportunities appeared, the right people showed up, synchronicities multiplied. She found work that actually mattered, helping people through coaching and energy healing. She connected with other volunteers, people who understood her on a soul level. She started creating content, sharing her story, offering guidance to others who were just beginning to wake up. And the more she leaned into her mission, the more support she received. She also learned important lessons about what it meant to be a volunteer. It didn't mean being perfect. It didn't mean never struggling. It didn't mean having all the answers. Being a volunteer meant being human while holding a higher frequency. It meant falling down and getting back up. It meant doubting and then remembering. It meant feeling tired and overwhelmed and still showing up anyway. It meant being real, being vulnerable, being honest about the challenges while also holding on to the truth of why she came. She learned to pace herself, to honor her human limitations even while embracing her spiritual nature, to take time to rest and recharge instead of burning herself out in service. She learned that she couldn't save everyone, couldn't help everyone, couldn't fix everything, and that was okay. Her job wasn't to save the world. Her job was to be a light in the darkness, to hold a frequency of love and truth that others could tune into when they were ready, to plant seeds that might not sprout for years, to trust that every conversation, every interaction, every moment of authentic presence was contributing to the larger shift happening on the planet. She also learned to recognize other volunteers. There was a certain look in their eyes, a certain energy in their presence, a knowing that passed between them without words. When she met these people, there was an instant connection, a recognition of being part of the same cosmic family, and she felt grateful for them, grateful that she wasn't alone in this mission, that there were thousands, maybe millions, of other souls who had made the same choice, who were going through similar struggles, who were waking up and stepping into their purpose. Together, they formed a network of lights spanning the entire planet, each one a node, a beacon, helping to anchor higher consciousness into the physical realm. Years passed, the work continued. Some days were easy, some days were hard, but through it all, she held on to the memory of the gathering, the memory of the choice, the memory of why she came. That memory became her anchor, her foundation, the thing she returned to whenever doubt crept in or fear tried to take hold, and it never failed to bring her back to center, back to truth, back to love. She also noticed changes happening in the world around her. More and more people were waking up. More people were asking questions. More people were rejecting the old paradigms and seeking something deeper, something more meaningful. The shift was happening, slowly, gradually, but unmistakably, and she knew that every volunteer, every light worker, every awakened soul was contributing to this shift. They were doing exactly what they came here to do. Looking back on her life now, she could see the perfection of it all, how every experience, even the painful ones, had been necessary. How every struggle had strengthened her. How every moment of darkness had taught her about light. She wouldn't change anything, because it all led her here, to this moment, to this understanding, to this mission, and she knew she would continue, would keep showing up, would keep helping, would keep holding the frequency of love and truth for as long as she was needed. Because that's what volunteers do. They serve, they give, they love. Not because they have to, but because it's who they are. It's why they came. And there's no greater honor than fulfilling the purpose your soul chose before you were born. Sometimes the answers we seek aren't found in this lifetime alone. And if this story awakens something in you, subscribe for more stories that touch the soul.